Dungeons are a key part of the Zelda experience. So when it came to designing a full wave of LEGO The Legend of Zelda sets, it was a no-brainer that I should translate the amazing experience into brick form. This is the journey on how I designed my dungeons. Firstly, if you have no clue what I'm talking about, I recommend checking out my custom LEGO Legend of Zelda showcase. But anyway, today I wanted to share the development behind my interlocking dungeon sets Z0001, Z0003, and Z00010. This all started back in the first lockdown when I decided to create a display model of Zelda out of LEGO. The initial ideas of what I would do for this project were all purely iconic, stuff like the Temple of Time, Hylian Shield, Hyrule Castle, and all of exactly what you think of when you think of Zelda. But one of the pillars of a Zelda game is its dungeons. The project came to the actual design phase when LEGO and Mario announced their partnership, and my initial hatred of the course building system made me more determined to find out how the now very possible LEGO Zelda could be done right by the LEGO Group. Where Zelda would have the most crossover with LEGO was not in iconic buildings or a CMF series, but instead in the heart of the puzzles in the dungeons. You see, the similarities between the LEGO Mario Course Builder system and a Zelda dungeon were already numerous. I'm thinking of these playability-heavy sets, the rich variety of puzzles and thus play features, and the exotic landscapes and creatures in a Zelda game make a great fit for sets, and I was instantly clear that the system of play should be modular. I got this from the Skykeep dungeon in Skyward Sword, which acts as a puzzle slider between rooms. Therefore, what if you did the same with LEGO? A system of compatible rooms connected with Technic pins, each with a theme and play feature to use in order to progress to the next room. To unify the rooms, they would all have to have walls along the back and right, allowing for uniform connectivity and a modular style of play where you could rearrange the rooms. Initially, I planned 3 dungeon sets based off the 3 most common elements of dungeons that you see in the Zelda series: fire, water, and forest, red, blue, and green, with the plan to add other themed expansions like Desert Temple and Shadow Temple and other stuff like that in future waves. Fire became the flagship based off the Fire Sanctuary from my favourite game Skyward Sword, due to its unique atmosphere and wide range of play features that gave it such a unique variety compared to other dungeon candidates. Twilight Princess Water Temple came next due to the application of its large central room and what this could bring to my dungeon system. For Forest, I felt obliged to choose Ocarina's Great Deku Tree, mainly because of the iconicness of the game and it sort of worked the best. And this would have a focus mostly on one dungeon room and a boss due to the small price tag I wanted to attach to this dungeon expansion. Of course, every dungeon needs a collectible, and following the flagship's lead, I chose the Sacred Flames for simplicity. Now I just needed to make the designs. The Fire Sanctuary was my first custom set altogether, and only my second attempt at custom figure drawing. The initial sketches proposed a Legoified drawing with hand-drawn minifigures. However, soon I decided on a studio build, and this was a far superior idea. Hand drawing would not get across the detail and the features that I wanted. My earliest notes picked out particular features of the dungeon. I had saved pictures of architectural details and enemies and plot points. Before building all 3 of the dungeons, I either played through them or watched someone else play through them so that I could pick up a good idea for what kind of things were going on inside this room and what sort of things I should be including. With the Fire Sanctuary in particular, I initially worked along the Scrapper plotline and planned flame dousing features just like in the game. I also knew I wanted to include the Central Trust Fall puzzle, which had caught my imagination back when I first played through the dungeon, and I would have to think of a creative way to transfer this play feature into the LEGO form. In some way, the set also had to be recognisable. Knowing that I was sticking a budget, this was particularly hard as I drew my layout sketches. The iconic frog mouth was a must-have and really does signify the entrance to the dungeon, although initially I did want to have the flame dousing feature here. The set had to be full of play features, so both water and bomb features were turned into rooms. The tilting platforms were the LEGO versions of the Trustful, with one tipping you off if you picked it. I also had to cut a lot of the architectural details that I initially wanted, because I was focused on play, and this was one of the biggest consistent things I noticed across. This was one of the biggest consistent things I noticed across designing all three of the sets, was that playability came first and the architecture genuinely suffered because of this. The hardest thing to settle on at first was the Magmar design, as I definitely needed it for playability as a mini-boss. An entire room was based around it, with this complete unique architectural style for the walls and its whole surroundings, kind of. But for such a curvy thing, it's very hard to represent in this square LEGO world. But including the exploding feature kind of helped just take me out of it and put me back where the focus was. It only had to be recognisable, not a perfect construction at figure scale. Very similar to how a lot of the Mario enemies have been transferred into their square variants for the LEGO system. There was still not enough substance for a flagship set though, so at the loss of the ornate lava fountain, an extra room was added, based around the freeing of the Mogma in the Fire Sanctuary sequence. This is one of the major plot points of the dungeon, and it made sense for me to include some stuff based off it in the form of a room, and it worked very well as a set story. That's one of the advantages of the way I've done the dungeon system, is each room can tell its own story, its own puzzle. Then when you rearrange them, you tell these stories in different orders however you like. The play determined the figure selection, as Link led Scrapper and Girahim all being 100% required to bring the play features included to life, or just add that extra level of charm. The Dark Lizalfos was to add one more function and thing to do with the set, and kind of fill out a space. I also had a fairly low figure count for the budget, and I try and keep those as fair as possible. Technically speaking, I started the Water Temple next. Multiple design iterations passed as I refined the complex design. The desirability of this one in particular would be the spiral staircase being the most iconic part of the dungeon. This staircase would give access to second floor rooms on the dungeon, if not a permanent second floor, and acting as a four-way junction to take these dungeon sets out of the linear plane. You would be able to create this sprawling dungeon layout just like your Mario courses, and it would all be possible with the addition of this set. Not that they look bad in linear or that the Fire Sanctuary was linear, but this would have really expanded what you could do with the course. However, on a technical standpoint, the set was incredibly over-engineered and collapsed with collision errors in studio, and I had to give up. It was taking too long and going too wrong. I did not make this decision lightly, and this set remains half-built, locking half of the dungeon's charm with it, and ruining kind of what I've already built. The forest design, however, came out easier. Keeping to the small budget brought a unique challenge, especially when half of that budget was spent on the boss, Goma. It gave me not much room to maneuver. I probably had enough budget left for about one room and maybe a platform for Goma, which is exactly what I did. I wanted to take the iconic spiderweb puzzle and include this somehow, but I struggled to represent it in any non-lackluster way, especially at this scale. I didn't have the bricks to build up a pit for you to jump in, and it would be too much out of system for the dungeons. You see, I can't just have things starting in mid-air. They all have to start at the same plane, connect to any room's previous door, which is at 2 bricks and 2 plates high. So a pit would be useless. But the idea of jumping on it and it collapsing is nothing else if not detail, and it's just a bit of fun, really, at the end of the day. The rather bland starter dungeon puzzles make the decoratry also hard to represent because there's really not that much to choose from, but in the end I went for using the slingshot to shoot a crystal and the door would open, just like in the Minecraft Ocean Monument, which is a very clever play feature that I was absolutely overjoyed to implement again, as I think it really should be represented more. That's the kind of play feature I wanted. And one of my favourite parts across the Mario theme is the range of play features, and I was so happy that across this and the Fire Sanctuary, I got to implement some absolutely amazing ones, even if it was just as simple as a slider or a chain lift. They all felt relatively fresh and unique to the Zelda theme. The dungeons I designed were a catalyst for every LEGO Zelda thing I've done since, and I love the roots that I've come from. I still believe wholeheartedly that they are the purest synergy between the LEGO and Nintendo licenses, representing the Zelda world in all its games, colours and puzzles, as well as incorporating that LEGO creativity, ability to customize, rearrange, play, enjoy, collect and possibly expand into creating your own rooms. I know for a fact that dungeons are the way to go for LEGO and Zelda, as that's what 10-year-old me would have wanted building back in the day when I was building my first Lego Zelda MOCs. I built dungeons. And I think that's a testament to show how I got here. I've wanted dungeons and the Lego Zelda license for so long, and this just feels like the purest and most creative way they could do it. It also feels the most likely to me, considering what they did with Mario, and I hope you guys understand why I think this is what we get when they make Lego and Zelda. But most importantly, do you understand what it takes to make a dungeon? Do you want to see more expansions from me in the future? Subscribe if you made it this far into the video and talk to me in the comments, but I'll see you next time.